Welcome back to the channel. I hope you've been enjoying these little book talks. I've been enjoying talking about books, in case you haven't already noticed that. This is actually a book that I've been meaning to talk about for quite some time. I'm not entirely sure how I found out about this particular series of books. It's possible that it was either very cheap on on Google Books, like $2, or free, and I got it and really enjoyed it, and so I ended up getting the rest of the series. I'm actually still missing one book. I'm waiting for it to either go on sale or become free or whatever. Anyway, this book is called The Complete Tales of Jules de Grandin. I'm probably butchering that quite badly. And it's volume 1. It's The Horror on the Links by Seabury Quinn. Now, this particular series of books was originally published from 1925 to 1951, and they were submitted to a magazine, like pulp magazines. These are pulp adventure stories. And like I said, it's between the 1925 and 1951, which, if you are familiar with publications during that time period, you'll know that like these pulp style gothic horror and stuff were very popular during that time period. And so it's no surprise that this became popular during that time period. Now, Jules de Grandin is a fictional detective who specializes in the occult. Now, further than that, he is a very intelligent man, very athletic. He was a member of the French Sûreté, which is the French police force, and also a physician. So, but as opposed to just being a doctor, he really focused on being a criminologist and investigating the occult. So, in the first book, we are introduced to our first character. His name is Dr. Samuel Trowbridge. Dr. Trowbridge lives in New Jersey, in a place called Harrisonville, which is a fictional city in New Jersey. Now, Dr. Trowbridge is basically like, one of those town doctors. He knows everybody. Everybody knows him. They've been going to see him. He gets a call in the middle of the night to come and check out a patient, and it's like, I've known this patient since he was a baby. I helped his mother with the birth, and now he's grown up, and blah blah blah. So he rushes over, and this young man has been attacked. He has scratches and stuff all over him. So he medicates him, bandages his wounds, and basically, gives him some morphine to help him sleep. Now, if you're wondering about the morphine and stuff, and you're thinking, it was the 1920s to 1951. So there's a lot of references to like giving drugs like morphine to people, because that's what they did at the time. I'm sure that if you look at the books that are being published now, they'll talk about giving them other types of drugs. It's just, that's kind of the thing. Anyway, back to the book. Now, he goes back home, and the next morning, his housekeeper brings in two people. One is Jeremy Costello, who happens to be a police officer in New Jersey, and Dr. de Grandin, who is described as being medium height. He's not too tall, not too short. He is thin, but physically fit, active, his mustache. He has wheat blonde mustache and blue eyes, and he waxes his mustache and twirls it into points. The first impression that Dr. Trowbridge gives of de Grandin is that he's like a tomcat. He's very quick on his feet, and with the pointed mustache, he gives him the appearance of, or gives him the impression of a tomcat. Now, I very much enjoyed this one. The reason the first story is called Horror on the Links is because the young man was found on a golf course, and a lot of what is happening takes place. The first story takes place around a country club and a golf course. Now, let me pull up. So, he goes in. Dr. Trowbridge very much becomes Jules de Grandin's Watson. And in very many respects, the formula for Sherlock Holmes is duplicated here. We have the very smart detective who knows way more than other people, that and his chronicler who tells the story to us, the Dr. Watson. If you like Sherlock Holmes novels, if you like mysteries, you probably will like this. However, you do have to understand that far from being the Sherlock Holmes type story where it's always a human that's doing it. They may have tried to disguise their depredations as otherworldly, but it always, Sherlock Holmes, for instance, the Hound of the Baskervilles is a great one there, where the Hound was dolled up to look otherworldly, but it actually was, spoiler alert there, it actually was the depredations of a human agent making use of a disguised dog. In this case, with Jules de Grandin and the stories there, you may be dealing with a human who is trying to disguise their trying to disguise their themselves as a ghost or as a monster. But at the same time, you might be dealing with someone who does have supernatural powers, or an otherworldly entity that has come back to take revenge, or a curse that has been leveled against someone, and Jules de Grandin is trying to fight that off. So anyway, some of the stories, as I said, there's Horror on the Links, there's the Tenants of Brusac, the Isle of Missing Ships, Vengeance of India. In the Tenants of Brusac, it's a chateau in France, and the original owners are no longer there, and anyone who comes and tries to live there in that chateau, they end up being horribly murdered. One guy was torn to pieces. Another guy was squeezed until he was like twice his original length. The Isle of Missing Ships. Jules de Grandin is hired by Lloyd's of London, who insure everything, to find out why these ships keep going missing. And so he ends up going to it's the Indian Ocean, but I forget exactly where. Sumatra, I want to say. Now, if I remember right, Sumatra doesn't necessarily exist anymore. No, so it's part of Indonesia. It's a large Indonesian island. It may have at the time been considered its own country, and now it's part of Indonesia. Anyway, again, there's a lot of changes that have happened to the world since the 1920s and 1950s. So anyway, so sometimes, Jules de Grandin will be facing off against a supernatural occult occurrence, devil worshippers, animated corpses, all sorts of things like that. But sometimes it's what I like to refer to as a Scooby-Doo ghost. So if you're familiar with if you're familiar at all with Scooby-Doo, you'll know that they always go in because there's a ghost or a monster or whatever, but then it always turns out, except for in a couple of their newer adventures. But anyway, they always go in, and it's always a human that is behind the mask. So you will run into that with Jules de Grandin, as well as actual ghosts that he has to deal with. And since it's interesting to me, since he's made a study of the occult, one of the things that he carries around in his noggin are ways to deal with ghosts and werewolves and monsters and all sorts of things. Anyway, I very much enjoyed the books. They're fun. They're fun adventures. They're all short stories, so they're not too long. While the first volume is over 700 pages long, each story is obviously a fraction of that, and so you can go through quite a few stories. Let's see. In the first book alone, we have the Horror on the Links, obviously the Tenets of Brusac, the Isle of Missing Ships, the Vengeance of India, the Dead Hand, the House of Horror, Ancient Fires, the Great God Pan, the Grinning Mummy, the Man Who Cast No Shadow, the Blood Flower, the Veiled Prophetess, the Curse of Everard Mondy, Creeping Shadows, the White Lady of the Orphanage, the Poltergeist, the Gods of East and West, Mephistopheles and Company Ltd, the Jewel of Seven Stones, the Serpent Woman, Body and Soul, Restless Souls, the Chapel of Mystic Horror, and that actually spans the publication of the Jules de Grandin stories from 1925 up to 1928. So there's lots to read, and if you're interested, they are available on Google Books, and they're, like I said, they're fun. They're fun to read. They're fun adventures. However, I should say that they are a product of their time, and if you are sensitive to that, steer clear. The thing is that I think one of the reasons that I may have gotten in and started reading some of this is because of those. It was maybe one of those lists where it's like, we couldn't publish this today, kind of thing, and it's like, well, if you did publish it today, you could publish it today. You just have to realize that one of the things that goes into publishing is publishing. One, you're publishing for the time. To Kill a Mockingbird, for instance, is considered a classic, but I can't tell you how many times it's been banned in different places. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, both of those have sensitive subjects in them. But I wouldn't say don't read them. I would tell you they're a product of their time. And if you do read them with that understanding that not everybody is going to have the same sensibilities that you do. Anyway, I felt that Jules de Grandin, actually his character, is very good about what's the word? He's very good about respecting the people around him. He doesn't like blow off people's superstitions or traditions or customs or anything like that. He is a Catholic. He's French, so he's Catholic, and he does not, he believes that what all Catholics should believe, that they are the true religion and any other religion is false. I mean, that's kind of how you should be in your religion. This is the true religion. Otherwise, why are you there? Go find the true religion. But anyway, so he does say things like, the false god of Islam, things like that. But if there is something that, like, there's one story where it involves like an Islamic curse or superstition or something of that nature, and he takes it seriously. He doesn't brush it off as, oh, that's mere superstition of barbarians. He's like, no, we need to take this seriously because it could be destroying this person's life. And he's very respectful of the people to whom he speaks. People come in and they're like, oh, you'll never believe me because, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, I believe you. I do believe you because these things have power. And so he, in that way, I feel he is respectful. However, you do have to take into consideration that there are some things where the prevailing sentiment of the time may play part of the narrative. So it could be that there's somebody in there that whose worldview is not a very pretty worldview. The person whose worldview is not usually the pretty worldview, they're usually portrayed as the villain. Or I shouldn't say they're portrayed as the villain. They usually end up being the villain because they're trying to destroy the world or rule the world or summon some demon into the world, so something of that nature. So anyway, that being said, they are products of their time. I think that we could actually create a television series out of this or a movie out of the Jules de Grandin. I don't think it would be impossible. I think that we just have that mindset of, ooh, this is a taboo subject. We need to be careful. And yes, we do. And instead of being, well, it's more like this is a taboo subject. We have to leave it alone. No, it's a taboo subject. Yes, we need to be careful with it. We need to be careful to portray. The thing is that if you're doing you're doing a film adaptation of Tom Sawyer or Huckleberry Finn, I don't want you to change it. I want you to stay faithful to the subject, which means that you may have to bring in some worldviews and things that were prevalent at the time, and now we know that those things are horribly, horribly evil. I just remember I've read both Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, and I remember the some of the language that is used in those books, and since they were written at that time, in that time period, about that time period, it would be weird if the jargon of the time period was not reflected in the dialogue in the book. And that's the same thing with the stories of Jules de Grandin. I feel very strongly that it should portray the actual dialogue that you would hear, the actual jargon that you would hear between the 1920s and 1950s. That just seems appropriate. So if we do put that into like a show or a movie or something, we should have that. Anyway, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed that. Let me know if you've read this. Let me know if you want to know more about Jules de Grandin and Seabury Quinn. And that's it for today. And until next time, enjoy what you're reading.